Right, it's a beautiful morning, Sunday morning, and we're on our way to the cliffs to do our walk to the lighthouse and back again. We're going towards the castle now. In a minute I'll show you the view across the channel, if we can see it, because the sun's actually shining coming from the east, and we'll be looking that way when we look out. So, here we come, we're coming up to it now. Looking out to the left there is the channel, and of course France, 22 miles away, and we'll be going that way to go on the cliffs. Just coming up in front is Dover Castle in the distance there. Dover Castle has got the title of being the largest castle in England, not in Great Britain but in England. It's had a few battles. A number of films have been shot in Dover Castle, Into the Woods being one of them. Can't think of the others. Right, we'll now go onto the road that actually leads us to the cliffs. As we go down here, in actual fact, if you take the path off to the right, it goes down to a memorial. It was the first flight across the channel by a Frenchman called Louis Blériot, and they've actually got paving stones that are in the shape of an aeroplane down there in memorial of his achievement. Don't know the date, I'll have to look that one up. Anyway, we're on our way to the cliffs. Right, we've now arrived at the cliffs.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Right, we're now going up. We go past the National Trust Cafe, which does nice jacket potatoes and fillings and scones. Decent coffee and nice scones, which is always a pleasant treat after you've done a 4 or 5 mile walk, which we will be doing this morning. To the right, there's the Dover docks and the ferries coming in, as you can see. And as we go on, in front you can see there's the cafe. There's a little shop there as well which does gifts. Disabled parking right on the front there, gives a lovely view. And we go and park the car now. Oops. We're now up the cliffs. Over here is Dover Docks. In the distance is Shakespeare Cliff, Dover Castle, and as we come round, up here is the Coast Guard station. It looks after most of the channel. Come in front, pushing on, and I'll show you the view from the top when we get there. This is the Dover Cliffs Coast Guard station. Helicopter is normally stationed here. And as we come around, across in the distance, you probably can't see it, but you can see the French hills. And over here is the first view of the Dover Cliffs. This is Langdon Hole. We'll go along and show you a bit more. Rather muddy today. It's been icy and frosty, and when it's icy and frosty during the night, when it starts to melt, it becomes quite treacherous. So I'll put the camera away for a moment while we carry on. still at Langdon Hole. Kim's going down there. It's really incredibly slippy, but this is a better view of Langdon Hole. Here we are. Let's carry on the walk. We're skirting around the edge of Langdon Hole now, and this very straight piece of path, quite wide, goes back down there all the way to the docks, but over the cliffs as well. It's where the mines at Tilmanston, Betshanger and Snowdon used to send their coal on a conveyor belt, which was on pylons, and it used to come from inland, I don't know what, 4 or 5 miles to here, and then down to the cliffs. The conveyor belt carried on down the cliffs where they loaded it onto the boats. But it's quite an, I don't think it lasted for very long, because it was, I think that road transport probably took over from it. But here we are. We're just leaving Langdon Hole, and we're now coming on what we call the farm track, which I presume is a farm track, but in the Second World War this was a road that led to barracks, and up here they had loads of barracks because there are gun batteries which had to be manned. And the actual fact, as we walk along, in front they've just excavated 2 underground rooms, which we believe, or been told anyway by the archaeologists, that they were map rooms. They can't get in them at the moment, but they're going to prepare them so the public can go in there in the near future. If you follow the path, a bit like the yellow brick road, goes on forever, at the end there you can see the South Foreland lighthouse, which we're making for. When we get to the lighthouse, we'll be turning back and coming back along the cliffs. Right, we're now at the end of the farmer's path, and we've come up to the South Foreland lighthouse, which I think is Victorian. Is that right, Kim?
Yeah.
Which is Victorian. There used to be 2 lighthouses, one a bit further down, and the sailors could then judge exactly where they were by the 2 lighthouses together and the distance. And obviously around here we've got the Goodwin Sands, so it obviously helped with them to negotiate that as well. Oh yeah, we've also got Marconi. He sent his first, was it radio or television?
Radio.
His first radio signal. He was in the lighthouse, and he sent his son out in a rowing boat into the sea, and yeah, into the English Channel, and he sent a radio message to him. There's a lot more about Marconi, but you'll have to look that up because I can't remember it. Let's move on. We're now on the other side of the lighthouse, and we're just coming up to a little alleyway that leads to the cliffs, and here's Kim's favourite sign. As you can see, we don't any of that, so we carry on now down the alleyway. I'll put the camera down at the moment because it's a bit slippy. Lovely view out to sea, well, into the channel rather. If you come round in the distance there's the old lighthouse that used to work in unison with the new one, but it's been out of use now for many years. There's a big house there as well, which has got lovely grounds and lovely views. As we come round South Foreland Lighthouse, and we're now on our return journey. Right, here we are, the first part of the cliffs on the return journey. I'm not going too close because I don't like it particularly, but there you can see the white cliffs. In actual fact, there's a little piece on the right there which is a grayer. That was probably a pillbox from the Second World War that's collapsed because the cliff has collapsed. I don't know if I'd fancy working in that, but it's all gone now apart from the back wall. But as you can see, it's quite a way down. Let's carry on. the next stop on the way will be Fan Bay, which is
Depression.
yeah, as Kim says, it's a depression in the earth. It's almost like an amphitheatre, with the sea or the channel being the stage. I'll show you when we get there. Oh, before we even get there, we've got a cutting in the cliffs. I'll explain that in a short while. Right, we're not quite at Fan Bay yet, but we've come to the cutting I mentioned earlier in the cliffs, and I'll explain why that's there. Back in 18 something or the other, there was a ship called the Prussian that was carrying a cargo of grand pianos, and during the storm it floundered off the bottoms of these cliffs. They wanted to save the cargo if they could, so what they did, they came and they actually dug a channel in the cliffs or down to the beach, which is this channel here. What they did then, they then had a steam traction engine over here, and they then used the traction engine to pull the pianos in their crates up through this shaft. At low tide you can actually see the tops of the mast of the Prussian, but yeah, quite some time ago, and don't want to get too near. We've now arrived at Fan Bay, and you'll see even better as we walk around. We walk on that fence over there that looks like an amphitheatre, and if you can see in the hill opposite, there's two grey things. They're sound mirrors. They were used in the First and Second World War. What they used to do is they're made of concrete, and a dish going inward, so it's inverted, and what they did is they put a microphone in the centre of the dish just away from it, and they could then hear the aeroplanes coming across the channel, which gave them just enough time for warning to man the guns or whatever. I've just been told there are 3 sound mirrors, not 2. Also behind the mirrors there are tunnels that go into the cliff, and if over there there's a flagpole on top of the hill, and the entrance to the tunnels is there. That's where they obviously went and sheltered when bombs were being dropped or shells were being fired. In the distance there you can see Dover Docks, which obviously was bombed an awful lot in the Second World War. There are more and more Second World War places being opened on the cliffs, so there'll be plenty more to see in the future. Right, let's circumnavigate Fan Bay. Right, we're now walking past Fan Bay. Over there you can see the sound mirrors, there the flagpole. The ferry's going into port. Kim thinks we're probably about 300 foot up here. Lovely views out to sea. Walking the cliffs when it's -1 with the sun shining is really nice. It clears the cobwebs and makes you feel happy you're alive. We're right next to the entrance to the tunnels where the flagpole is. You can actually go underground and they give you a tour of the tunnels and what conditions were like. I think there are sound effects in there as well now. Over the top of the hill there you can see the South Foreland, and that's just come out of Fan Bay. And we're going to make our way now back to Langdon Hole, and after Langdon Hole I think it'll have to be the National Trust Cafe for a cup of coffee. Maybe not a cake because I'm on a diet, but a cup of coffee sounds good. Still on our way back to the National Trust Cafe. My lips are frozen. We've got to go past the Coast Guard station, which you can see on top of the hill, and so we've got about, I presume, around about a mile and a bit, mile and a quarter, something like that, to get back. As you can see, Dover Docks, being a Sunday, is not as busy as it is normally, but bearing in mind it's just early January now, this actual summer season when it's really ultra busy. It doesn't start until March. And as we go around, lovely views.
Silly people sitting too near the edge on a rocky cliff house, overhangs that crumble.
And we always see the same thing, as Kim was just saying, that people sit too close to the edge. In the winter time when it snows and frost like we've had recently, and last night it was really cold, about -3, the water gets into the cracks crumble, and although you're sitting on an edge you think it's safe, it might be undercut. So it's up to them, but I think they're silly. Right, we move on now to a cup of coffee in the National Trust Cafe. Okay, on the last half a mile now, we've had a really enjoyable walk. It's been extremely muddy in places, but after a -3 night with frost and ice everywhere, it's only to be expected that when the sun comes out it's going to melt the top part of the earth and it's going to be very slippy. Something we never think about until we're actually here. But there you are, I suppose that's human nature. In the distance you can see Dover Castle, you can see Dover Docks. In the distance there is the coast of France, and far over to the left, you can just see it but maybe not on this video, are the buildings in Calais. They're the white flats on the seafront. But as we carry on, we're now going to go down to the National Trust Cafe. Morning.